Statue number 44, Elizabeth Thorne Monument. This statue is the second statue honoring women at Gettysburg. Elizabeth Thorne was born in 1832 and died in 1907. This monument is off of Baltimore Pike in the same cemetery close to Jenny Wade's grave. Note the shovel beside her, as she dug 91 graves, even though she was 6 months pregnant. Statue number 45, General Andrew Humphreys. General Humphreys graduated from the U.S. Military Academy and spent most of 30 years as a civil engineer in the Army. When given a command, his unit distinguished itself at Fredericksburg. His unit fought bravely at Gettysburg on the Emmitsburg Pike against a much stronger Confederate force. Statue number 46, the 13th Pennsylvania Reserves. This unit was also known as the 42nd Regiment and was organized in April of 1861. The soldiers were largely hunters and woodsmen and wore male deer tails pinned to their caps as a sign of their shooting skills. The regiment was known as the Bucktails. Secretary of War Stanton ordered an officer to recruit an entire brigade of Bucktails. These new regiments adopted the same emblems, and the original Bucktail units were upset. The old units called the new unit bogus Bucktails. The 13th Pennsylvania Reserve was prominent at Antietam, Fredericksburg, and Gettysburg. Statue number 47, the Grand Army of the Republic Monument. One of the most powerful groups in the United States was the veterans organizations known as the Grand Army of the Republic. This group was dedicated to helping the vets and providing the camaraderie that Army life had nurtured. The man depicted in this monument is Albert Woodson. He and his fellow comrades participated in the large anniversary gatherings in 1913 and 1938. In 1956, Woodson died at the age of 109, having outlasted all the other men who had served in the Union forces during the Civil War. Statue number 48, the 111th New York Infantry. This particular statue shows an infantry soldier who was known as a skirmisher. These were the individuals deployed in advance of the main battle line to provide early warning. Elements of the 111th New York performed this function. The monument was erected where the regimental flag stood during the battle. 4 color bearers and 2 officers were killed during Pickett's charge. Notice that the soldier is prepared to fire at any sign of enemy movement. Statue number 49, the 1st Pennsylvania Cavalry. This unit was in position during Pickett's charge, waiting in reserve in case the enemy broke through. The statue is life-size, of Private Joseph Lindermuth of Company L of the unit. Notice that his weapon was a Sharp's carbine rather than a musket used by infantry soldiers. Monument number 50, the High Water Mark Monument. Historians consider the repulse of Pickett's charge as the high water mark of the Civil War as the Confederates' cause began to recede. On June 2, 1892, this monument was dedicated. It was placed at the site where Pickett's men aimed, and consists of a massive open book propped up by 2 rows of cannonballs. On the pages of the book are the names of the Confederate unit that were in the assault and the Union units that aided in the repulse. The monument was paid for by 14 states listed on a plaque beneath the book. Monument number 51, the United States Regulars Monument. The Army of the Potomac was composed primarily of volunteer units raised by the individual states. The professional Army of the United States was quite small at the time of the Civil War and formed a small portion of the Union Army at Gettysburg. The regular infantry were combined in 2 5th Corps brigades. These units participated in the evening battle on July 2nd in the Wheatfield and Devil's Den areas. 171 regular soldiers lost their lives at this battle. with 923 wounded. On the monument, there were bronze plaques listing each regular regiment and battery that served at Gettysburg, along with the name of the commander. On Memorial Day 1909, the monument was dedicated by President William Howard Taft. Monument number 52, the 72nd Pennsylvania Infantry. This unit was instrumental in pushing back the Confederate soldiers at a stone wall at Pickett's Charge. The nickname for this unit was the Philadelphia Fire Zouaves. The survivors of the battle insisted that the monument be placed at this point. However, there was some resistance. The men of the 72nd purchased the land from the Corrory farm so the monument could be placed where the unit fought. However, a court battle took place and lasted 3 years. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court upheld the lower court decisions and let the regiment's monument be placed on the spot near the stone wall. The monument was designed by a former private, J. Reed, depicting a soldier dressed in the uniform of the Philadelphia Fire Zouave, using his musket as a club. The monument was dedicated on July 4, 1891. Monuments number 53, 71st Pennsylvania Infantry. One of the oddities on this monument is the designation that the 71st Pennsylvania is also known as the California Regiment. A group of Californians in Washington decided to have their state represented in the East. In a short time period, a regiment was raised from New York and Pennsylvania, giving the designation of the California Regiment. Later on, it was redesignated as the 71st Pennsylvania, but the nickname stood. Its original colonel was a senator from Oregon named Edward Baker. Other regiments were named the California Regiment, but later were grouped into a single brigade, named the Philadelphia Brigade, the only brigade in either army to be named after a city. Monument number 54, Soldiers and Sailors of the Confederacy. In the 1960s, there was a movement to erect a monument honoring the Confederate armies and navies. Funds came from all the Confederate states and from the border states as well. The statue depicts a charging Southern color-bearer beckoning his comrades onward. The granite base contains the names of the states that contributed to the monument. It was dedicated on August 25, 1965. Statue number 55, Major William Wells. Major William Wells was with a unit of the 1st Vermont Cavalry that attacked Law's Alabama Brigade. They were repulsed, but fought bravely, and Major Wells was awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor for his bravery. Wells later rose to the rank of Brevet Major General. Friends of the general were so pleased with the statue that they had an exact copy erected at Battery Park in Burlington, Vermont. A plaque on the front of the monument shows the fierce fighting during the cavalry charge. Statue number 56, General Governor Warren. General Warren was chief engineer of the Army of the Potomac, and his monument stands on the boulder from which he spotted the Confederate forces advancing on July 2nd. Realizing that Little Round Top must remain in Union hands, as it was an ideal position for artillery, he ordered his signalmen to remain on this hill and sent for reinforcements to protect this vital area. His action allowed the hill to be saved, and he was called the Savior of the Little Round Top. Monument number 57, the 155th Pennsylvania Infantry. The monument of the 155th Pennsylvania Infantry is situated at the summit of Little Round Top, where the regiment waited to go into battle. The monument has a life-size statue of a private on the unit. What stands out is the uniform on this soldier. The original Zouaves were part of the French army in Algeria, made up of native tribesmen, with red baggy pants, dark blue jacket, and a tasseled fez for a cap. The Algerian troops were known for their bravery and ferocity, which their American counterparts wished to emulate. A former private, Samuel W. Hill, was the model for the statue, and the statue stands at the location where the 155th waited for the Confederate forces. Monument number 58, the 1st Pennsylvania Light Artillery Battery F&G. This monument features a bas relief of the battery's 3-inch ordnance rifles with the gun's number 3 and number 1 cannoneers in position waiting to fire. The job of the number 1 was to sponge the barrel and ram the charge into the base of the tube. Number 3 job was to hold his thumb over the vent to prevent oxygen from entering the tube. It was usual to have 5 to 7 men manning the guns, but the work can be done by just 2 men. A particular unit fired their full load of ammunition and held their position with fierce hand-to-hand combat using pistols, handspikes, and rammers. Monument number 59, the 73rd Pennsylvania Infantry. The 73rd Pennsylvania Infantry Unit repulsed Confederate forces on East Cemetery Road on July 2nd. Most of the fierce fighting was hand-to-hand combat, and the Union troops were successful in keeping the Confederate forces from getting near 2 artillery batteries. The bronze plaque depicts the fight for the cannon in vivid detail. In the background on the plaque, one can see the cemetery gatehouse as it stands today. Monument number 60, the 9th Massachusetts Battery. The 9th Massachusetts Artillery Battery was a reinforcing unit with 6 12-pounder Napoleon guns. During the battle, Captain John Bigelow was wounded, and his bugler, Charles Reed, rode up to him and put the captain on the horse. Bugler Reed was awarded the Medal of Honor. This battery fired over 3 tons of ammunition from 6 guns, including 32 rounds of canister. Many years later, the monument was designed by the honored bugler, and the monument was placed where the heavy fighting took place.